sort of anxious and well, a little bit nervous about figuring out how I fit into the categories here, and thinking maybe just on the roughest basis, the fact that my work has gone over the last 11 years from museums and galleries more and more into public spaces, and creating works for non-art spaces and maybe a wider public, which I'm really excited about. Oh, you can't see this slide. Well, when I first started as sort of moving from being a musician to an installation artist, one of the first things I really realized was that we listen very consciously at times with our ears, but we also hear and listen with our bodies. We feel physical vibration through surfaces, as sound vibrates through a space, and it activates emotions immediately, and it also activates imagination. And in some ways, I think that some of that really fine detail of listening, in some ways, got away from me, and I forgot. And I was doing a lecture in Sydney, Australia recently, outside of a public art piece I did in a park. And the talk was for a group of children about 10, 11 years old, and I think I sort of dumbed it down a little bit at first and talked about what I do, and asked that when the kids went into the installation, they closed their eyes and listened and told me when they came back out, did sound grow? Did they hear differently? Did they feel anything differently? And the girl who's up on the screen at the moment raised her hand and said, could you tell me more about the sounds that you didn't use and why, and what would you like to do with them in the future? And I thought, that's a nice question. Another kid asked, can you talk to me about the difference between sound and music in your work? And I thought, wow, this is better than a whole bunch of other people I've been talking to and all sorts of journalists. But this beautiful girl, afterwards, she pulled me aside, and this was all being videotaped, and the Minister of Education was there, so there's sort of this high pressure, and she was really shy, and she said, can I ask you a question in private? And I said, yeah, of course. And she said, do you ever just find yourself just putting your head on the table, and when someone's talking, you just start to feel the vibration of the table? And my hands shook, and I thought, I wish I could hug this child, but I know you're not allowed to do that. But but I loved her dearly in that moment. And it also, she was listening creatively, and obviously her friends would laugh, and she was afraid, it wouldn't be very cool, but she was listening to the world in a way that is what drew me in, when I first started doing this. This is the kids inside one of the buildings. I had 3 kilns, old brickwork spaces. This is on the western edge of Sydney. There was sounds of wildlife that I'd recorded in the outback, water and wind. Each building had its own kind of sonic identity. These are just some of the places that I visited. This very nice bird. This space had golden sand and water sounds, underwater sounds, overwater sounds. This one had the wildlife, and it had about 13 tons of red earth that had been brought in from the outback. And this had black rock and sounds of wind. I just want to play you, I'll run out of time so quickly, but I want to play you one of the sounds that was a sound that was really familiar there, but in the same sense, when I put it into the installation, people said, wow, I've never listened to that. And it's one that makes me laugh. It's a crow that seemed to follow me everywhere I went and seemed to laugh. And called a Teresian crow. Comes back in a second. Okay. I'm supposed to have a more fancy slideshow, but somehow I think it's like part of my punk rock youth that I've tried to avoid PowerPoint. Anyway, to step back, for many years, from the late 80s through the 90s, I made soundtracks for video artists. And in 1999, I did a residency in the World Trade Center, and I was up there for 6 months. And in many ways, listened I hope, the way that lovely girl in Australia was listening, which was, I got this residency and I thought I would open the windows and put microphones outside, and found you couldn't do that. So I started squeezing my ear to the walls and the windows and thinking, what could one hear in a perfect world if I could figure out the system to do it, and found that contact mics, these very inexpensive little things that work kind of like a stethoscope, could actually pick up the vibration of the building. It could pick up planes, helicopters, storms. The first thing I ever heard when I got the mics actually working were church bells. And through this kind of intimate listening, and I came to know not only my little studio space, but came to know the building. I had 24-hour access, so I'd go in there and I'd listen in the middle of the night, in the morning. The recording that, if some people have heard of mine, and I'll play you a little bit of it, was done right after the hurricane peaked. It was September of 1999. And I came into my space. It's the only time I ever heard the space without microphones and actually could hear the building speaking. And this is what I heard. So you hear wind, you hear traffic, but you also literally hear the building moving. That experience really changed my life and my career, separate from 9/11, and it's awkward. I mean, the day I was leaving, someone else contacted me about one of the 9/11 memorials, and I get contacted a lot about this material in relation to that. And for me, I never exactly know how to position, because it really, yes, it has to do with being in the World Trade Center and listening, and a kind of unique and privileged opportunity that I had, but it didn't, for me, really have anything to do with then what happened later. Those little microphones became tools for me, and I put them on all sorts of things. This is something that it's amazing I didn't just get kicked out of the art world forever for, but I was given access to this artillery shed in Marfa, Texas, with all of these beautiful Donald Judd sculptures, and they said I could go and record the ambience, but I double stick taped my mics and listened to sort of the creaking and cracking of the sculptures themselves in the summer heat, and later did an installation also in Marfa where people came. These are a group of Mexican cowboys who just kind of came through, went in, lay down, went to sleep, and maybe that's my social networking. It's kind of a beauty of sound installations. That another frustration that comes is that people often ask me to be in exhibitions, but say, we'll put you on headphones. And for me, you need the physicality of the sound in the space. You need a space for the audience. Quite often, people do just come in, sit, lay down. I'm kind of happy that there's no absolute place, no privileged center where you have to be. I'd rather people find any place that they'd like to go and stand, lay, listen, sleep, whisper, whatever makes them feel comfortable, but just find a point for listening. I'm going to jump through. This is a collaboration I did with Julie Meritu, a wonderful painter. What I thought I'd finish up by talking about a little bit is an installation I have up now on the High Line, an elevated park in New York City. That my piece is at 14th Street and 10th Avenue. It opened in June, and it'll close in May or so. The piece is called A Bell for Every Minute, and it's 59 different bell recordings from all over the city, from churches, synagogue, temple, to the New York Stock Exchange, ships, a cat. This is right across the street from Macy's. It's this fantastic bell that I'd never, all my life I grew up in New York and I'd never seen this. This is at the United Nations. It's called a peace bell. And the way this is at a yoga studio. This is the New York Stock Exchange. And the way the piece works is it runs from morning till night. There's a map on the wall that tells you if it's 7 minutes after the hour, you're listening to the bell that was dredged up at Coney Island from 1911. If it's 14 minutes after the hour, you're hearing Boots the cat. I have a really good image of Boots the cat. Hopefully you can see Boots. But again, in terms of intimate listening, part of what was wonderful about doing the project was getting to go all over the city and record the bells and have the interactions with the people who rang them, hear the bells close up, feel that physical vibration. This is called the Bell of Hope. It's at St. Paul's Chapel, which is about a block from where the World Trade Center fell. And when I went there, it was a rainy Sunday morning. I came in, and this lovely nun named Sister Precious, that's truly her name, said, okay, I'll take you out in a few minutes. I followed her out, thought she'd ring the bell once, we'd run back in. She didn't say much. And she rang the bell for 3 minutes and just watched me and smiled the whole time and never stopped. And I want to play you I think I have just enough time to play you 2 different sounds. This is a sound, and I have to say I can't play you the whole thing just because of time, but the longer that she rang it, the more of a gift it was to me. I think if she had hit it once, I would have felt it, we would have moved on, but there was something about not only the sound, but starting to hear as it bounced off the buildings, it hit my body as we had this exchange. And also knowing that this is a bell for victims of 9/11, it had that conceptual depth, thematic. Even maybe just make out the raindrops hitting off the bell. The last thing I'll play you, because I have 19 seconds, but it's 33 seconds, but I'll make it, is kind of the climax of the installation, which is at the beginning of the hour, all 59 bells ring together. And so you've got the McSorley's Ale House closing bell and the Wall Street bell, along with a Fisher-Price phone, as well as bells on the Torah at Brooklyn Heights Synagogue, et cetera, et cetera. All right, thank you so much.